And we're live streaming from Detroit Startup Week. This is Startup Nation. Jeff Sloan with RJ King from DBusiness, Our Media.
Great to be here.
Yeah, and we've got a good one here. Listen, anybody whose company's name is world famous company, the audacity,
the nerve,
David Tyerman. Hi. You're a branding guy. You're a marketing guy. You're a strategist, consultant, and you've had success in your own right with the company, and now you're helping others do that. First, tell us about your introduction into business and your first big success, and then we'll get to the world famous company in a minute.
I think I have to tell you about my first failure first.
That's good. That's important.
Hey,
so it's all right.
I'm from England, as you mentioned. I came to the States on vacation. And had one of those epiphanies when you sometimes on vacation you think, God, I could live here. And I was with my friend from work, and I said, I hate my life. I love California. I want to start a business. And he said, okay. And I said, no, I am serious.
Where were you?
We were in Santa Barbara, and we were on a balcony.
Beautiful spot to be.
Overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sun was setting.
That'll get you.
And you look up, and we saw this weird thing. It was a blue sky, because we're from England.
Yeah,
it's always grey, right?
With a sunset, too, Santa Barbara.
And there was a sunset, and there were palm trees. We've never seen palm trees before, so I'm like, this is paradise. I'm in. And so we went walking down State Street the next day to think about, well, what kind of business could we do? And we spotted, back in those days, there were loads of antique stores. And my uncle was an auctioneer. He had his own auction house selling antiques. And I thought, well, I could probably do this. And I saw the prices in the windows, and I thought, wow, that's a good price. And I never even thought that that's not the price they get. I never thought about rent. I didn't do any planning, except we created a plan to bring some antique vintage things to the States. And our big idea was to sell them via house parties, like Tupperware parties, but for antiques.
Yeah.
And so we sold everything we had in England, including my railway set. We raised We raised a lot of money, $10,000.
Okay.
We spent $5,000 on inventory, and we had $5,000 to live on.
Who'd you raise it from?
Selling all our stuff.
Oh, I see. You sold the stuff in order to raise money.
$10,000. That's the big amount I'm talking about. So we started doing our parties, and within 6 months we were down to our last 20. Because nobody bought anything. They drank the wine, they ate the cheese, they looked at the price tags, and they were like, oh, I think I left the iron on. And off they would go. So we went down to our last 20. And we decided, we sat staring at that $20 bill on the coffee table, and we had something worse than bad credit. We had no credit.
Yeah.
No credit cards, no friendly bank manager, no overdraft. So that 20 was it. And after a while, it was a Tuesday, we lived in Huntington Beach, and we were like, I said, do you have any ideas? He said, no, do you?
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat right now. What do you do when you get to $20 left?
Well, we just were talking about this. If you notice in the picture, I'm holding a glass of wine. I said, hey, you know what? There's that bar on Main Street. They sell all the beer you can drink for $7, all the nachos and cheese you can eat for $2.99. Let's go out. What are we going to do?
Eat and drink.
So we went out. And then that evening kind of changed my life. And I'll shorten the story because I know we don't have much time, but we ended up being driven home in a limousine by this guy we got talking to. And his words were, listen, you only fail if you quit. So you're broke. Who cares? Don't quit. And the next morning, I remember waking up, and that was the day I was dreading it. I was so afraid of waking up penniless.
Right.
But actually, I was relieved. I actually was like, oh, it's finally here, and I'm alive.
I'm still okay.
I've got
I can do this.
2 eyes, 2 ears. I've got legs.
And I'm getting up, and I'm going to go at my day.
And because no one bought our stuff, we actually still had inventory in the garage. So it wasn't like I had nothing. I just had no money. And we went walking to South Coast Plaza. It's a huge shopping mall in Southern California. And we noticed that stores like Nike and Guess, Banana Republic in those days were using the type of things we had in our garage in their displays.
In displays, right.
So we got busy walking into those stores and being walked out of a lot of them, saying, no, what's listing? But some people were helpful. And so I'm just going to cut a long story short. You've been into a Ralph Lauren store, right?
Of course.
So when you see the old suitcases and trunks and the dumbbells and the trophies, mountain bike, skis, all the things that tell their brand story, we ended up morphing our business into a visual branding company. We renamed ourselves Propaganda because we were using props to tell stories.
Oh, that's great.
And we ended up supplying every single Ralph Lauren store on the planet. So if you, even today, I sold the company in 2000. But even today, if you walk into any Ralph Lauren store and you see those props, they're the ones that we sold them. And so we did North America, Japan, Europe. We did every Nike store, every Tommy Hilfiger store. And we reached this level of success. We ended up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Wow, it's a good place to be.
And it, not because we got tons of media, thousands of newspapers, magazines, TV shows, not because of just the fact that we were successful, but for how we built our brand. We did some really kind of wacky, crazy branding that stopped people from just being asleep at the wheel. We managed.
You got noticed. You have to do something to get noticed.
You've got to hustle. No matter, even if you can raise 50 million for your company, it doesn't mean everything's going to work. You've got to hustle. And so today when I speak, I'm going to show the audience where and how you need to apply that hustle and how you tell a story that grabs people's attention. And having got my start, really, if you walk into a Ralph Lauren store, for example, no one grabs you and says, hey, let me explain our brand to you. We have to be able to communicate the brand without any words being spoken. And that's what we did with our props. And then I learned from the big companies, wait, I don't have a brand myself. So we got busy building our own brand. And then and people started asking, how did you go from your little garage to this? And so I started speaking. And that's when I found my real true calling to do this.
And all of that, resulting in that amazing story, is now what kind of puts you in position to be the inspiration that you are, the failures, the successes, the lessons learned, the risks taken, the bottom that you hit and came out of. That's now.
And the first time I told that story,
people relate to it.
They do, and I didn't realize how much people would. And people come to me saying, I'm there right now.
I feel that.
Or I've been there.
I get that.
And sometimes when I tell that story, people think, oh, that was that one time. No, it doesn't happen just once. Sometimes in the journey of building a business. Sometimes, I mean, there was one point, being down to my last 20 seemed bad, but imagine being minus 6.4 million, because I've been there too. And it's like,
that's another story.
So effectively, you have to really remember to stay with your hustle, because you can reach a certain level of success and you kind of ease off and you kind of think, I mean, I remember when I was making a really great amount of money, I stopped haggling. I thought, well, I've got money and they don't have as much, so I'm... And you know what? That was me not being on my game. People love haggling. It's actually relationship building if you do it nicely. So you've got to stay on your hustle. You've got to... Cash is king, and just because you have more cash, it doesn't mean you should just throw it away, which I actually remember doing. So we've got to stay focused.
You do have to stay so committed. You got to believe. You got to stay focused. I have a question as an aside on a somewhat of a personal level, but do you know a gentleman from the region here named Bobby Mellett? Bobby Mellett was in the exact same business working for Ralph Lauren outside of, where was he? He was in Montauk, I want to say, is where he was based, outside of New York, and he was doing the exact same thing, the display work, and created a huge business out of that. Obviously, that business is good.
He must have been copying me.
I know Bobby. Well, he's actually from Flint.
I'd love to meet him, because
I can connect you guys. I can connect you guys.
Okay.
I remember when he was doing that right about the same time.
Okay.
And doing it very, very successfully.
Interesting.
Yeah. Proud member of our Michigan community.
Great.
So, well, it's amazing. We've heard some themes, RJ, during the week about having a vision, believing in it, being bold, being brave. I love that. We heard from somebody we interviewed said, you've got to be brave. Lindsay Walega from Siren PR.
Mm-hmm.
And that resonates with you. You got to be bold. You got to be brave, right? You've got to think differently. If you think me too and same old, you're not going to get noticed.
No. In fact, what tends to happen, people have this ambition to start a business and they get so excited and they're going to change the world. And then you start and all of a sudden you've quit your job and you don't have any regular income and you're like, okay, well, how's it done in this industry? And the big mistake is looking over your shoulder and saying, oh, look, that's how it's done. That's how people do it in this industry. And they'll go and spend money and time, resources, literally bolting on camouflage. Websites that are similar to everyone else's, voicemail messages similar, videos that are similar. And before you know it, you're invisible. And then
Blah,
people are
blah,
wondering,
blah, blah,
how
blah,
come
right?
I've done
Yeah.
all of these things and no one can see me? It's because you camouflaged yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to be covering today, is identifying those areas where you've gone and accidentally become invisible, or you're actually boring your customers, or in fact, have you ever been to a website where you're like, this is so bad, it's actually, I'm not even interested in doing business with them.
Well, of
They've
course.
actually
I mean,
spent
whether
money.
it's a website, a store, or any kind of business.
Yeah.
I mean, right, of course.
They spent money
course.
telling you to go away, basically.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
So give us some tips today. You're going to give it, don't burn out all your good stuff. but you know what? I'm sure that's impossible. How could you burn out all your good stuff? That's not going to happen. We're not worried about that with you. Give us some tips. Give us some things. How do you stand out? You don't want to be ridiculous when you brand and when
Exactly.
there's a fine line, there's a balance.
There's a key word called authenticity.
Authentic. Even when you're being extreme, you still got to be authentic.
Actually, I'm going to tell a story that's nothing to do with me, but I think it's relevant to the question you're asking. There was a show on television about a car dealership in Las Vegas. It was called The King of Cars. They're still in business. They're all over the place. But the guy who owned the place was a big rapper dude, wore all the big jewelry, and he did these crazy branding stunts, really. The ugliest truck competition, and people would drive for miles with their ugly-ass trucks that they'd jacked up 15 feet or whatever. And
now, I don't know if this is going in a good direction or a bad direction, but so far, I think it's fun.
No, this is
an example of
a success story. Absolutely,
exactly. Okay,
and,
good.
And
so far, I like this.
Yeah, they would do a special deal where they're going to sell a car for $1. They would allow customers. They would put a salesperson over a dunking machine, and you could throw the ball, and if you hit the target, he gets dunked into the tank, and all sorts of crazy things that just drew massive crowds, and their sales were astronomical. And then other dealerships thought, oh, well, look, that dunking thing's a good idea, we'll do that. And it's just totally not authentic to who they are as a brand.
Exactly.
They're just copying. So, and then they're scratching their heads, well, how come we are not drawing big crowds? So you've got to, so I'm going back to the beginning now, when we were on that balcony in Santa Barbara, because it was a friend of a friend's place who said, you can stay for a couple of days. So she was at work, she worked in a restaurant, and we're watching the sun go down, having this, we're going to start a business. So we literally couldn't find any paper. All we could find were napkins. And it's like, this is so stereotypical, like a napkin and a pen. But
right,
we started talking, well, why would we start a business? And the first thing we wrote down was adventure. Because I was so bored of my life, I wanted an adventure. I can't remember all the other things, but I know that around number 7, it was any haircut we ever want. Because we'll be our own bosses. We can have any haircut we want. And then we got to 9, it's like, well, money. We should make money.
Yeah,
number 9?
Number 9. But the truth is, that word adventure has been at the very heart of my brand for the whole time.
Because that's the way you live.
Because it's how I live. It's who I am, so it comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
So we have to look at, one of the things we'll be covering today is core values. Even we have to pretend a brand is a person.
Yes.
And a person has a personality. So what's the personality of your brand? We've got to get into that. What's your attitude? Like, I'll give you an example. If I'm walking out of a store and I hold the door for somebody and they walk through and don't say anything, my attitude is I say, you're welcome. I'm not just going to let that drop because I just did something nice and they were rude. So that gives me cues on my kind of tongue-in-cheek attitude that affects my branding, and it resonates on an emotional level with my customers.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name World Famous Company? I mean, you see that and you're like, boom.
It was obvious.
Actually, the truth is, I was writing my book, and I was trying to come up with a title, and every time I came up with the best title ever, I would go to Amazon, and someone else had already got that title.
I know what that
just kept going, and I was getting so frustrated. Actually, my title came from, have you ever heard of Pike's Fish Market? Pike's
In
Place?
Seattle.
In Seattle,
Sure.
where they throw the fish.
Right.
And I was always so inspired about them because their brand story and their branding and their brand behavior made their fish store make more money than all the other fish stores in the entire Pike's Place market. And their vision, and I remember reading it this one day as I'm working on my book.
Interesting.
And their goal was to become world famous.
Huh.
And I'm like,
That's it.
And I thought, there's no way that will be available. There's no way.
But a funny thing, here you are saying, do you know about the fish store in Pike's Place that throws
And you
the
know
fish?
about it, right?
Immediately,
Yeah,
of
right.
course, right.
Because they're doing something out
Now,
of
if
the
you
box.
said, do you know about Joe's Fish Market, the third stall from the left as you walk in, I'd be like, no,
Right.
I don't know it.
Exactly.
And there's the difference.
Exactly.
There's the difference.
Exactly. So
Fish throwing.
so many people think, and as we see on the screen, there's all these logos. And so many people come to me, even sometimes after watching my presentation, and they're like, here, look at my brand, because they think their logo is their brand. It's not.
No, that's
It's
right.
literally a signpost
That's right.
telling you, okay, you're in the right place, if that's what you're looking for. Your brand is about the relationship. Your brand is about the story.
It's about
Right?
the story, and it's
Because
about
you remember the throwing of the fish, right? It's a story. Humans are hardwired to understand narrative. We make sense of the whole world that we live in by stories. And if we don't give them the right information or enough information, we literally make things up every single day. So in order to own the narrative, in order to own the attention of your customer, you have to have a kick-ass brand story that is easy to remember, like throwing the fish.
Now, let me ask you this. Not everybody has such a colorful story to tell. Not everybody's going to come up with a gimmick to do the ugliest truck and the fish throwing and everything else. You know, what I'm trying to drive at here is that there are a few creative breakthroughs that we're talking about now because they're the examples of great success out there. There are a few, but not every average person and every average company has, seemingly on the surface of it, a clever little thing or a great story or a great narrative. It could be just, I want to support my kids and pay my mortgage, and I'm fighting hard and I'm working hard and I've gone from my day job to. So sometimes you got to find the story, right? You got to root it out. You got to dig
always
deeper.
right
And
under your nose.
is there always a story?
There always is a story.
There's always a story. That's a
I
given.
was just doing an exercise with a company just yesterday here in Detroit. And we did an exercise which we're going to do today in the presentation. And it was about choosing a trait of yours that you are sure you have. And one of the people in the audience, in the group, said a great word. He said, I'm paranoid. And I'm like, brilliant word. Because what does that cause you to be? And he said, really detail-oriented. Because
Interesting.
I get paranoid, I'm going to make a mistake. That's a great storyline. Because everybody has, a storyline has to be about what other people can relate to.
So the storyline might have been, if you were to then take that and craft it, give us an example how that translates.
Well, the company, they're a marketing company.
Yep.
So if we used that storyline saying, I'm paranoid that I wouldn't have any customers, or I'm so paranoid, I'm
So I
going to do
attend
a
to
kick-ass job
every
for you.
detail. I don't want to
And this is
fail.
just in its-
Go the extra mile.
This is just in its formative stage. There's there's more to it than just that one idea. So we've got to look at several elements. So I'm not going to say
But that's a point of entry.
but
That's something to grab onto and build from. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
and
really
it's really we have to
interesting.
look at the bigger picture of why are we here? Because some people, they do just want to be. I mean, one of my key phrases is, with a business without a brand is just a vendor, and vending is for machines. If we had a vending machine right here and the identical vending machine across town, would you bother going across town? You wouldn't. You'd just use this
It's
one.
convenience, efficiency,
Yeah.
right.
So
Right.
if you're just vending, so many business owners, they're like, oh, the market's so fickle. People are so fickle. It's like, actually, no, you're making them fickle because you're just trying to sell your goods or services. You're not creating a brand. You're not creating a story. You're not creating a relationship. So when you create a relationship, people, like, for example, every time I fly to England, I guarantee you I'm flying Virgin Atlantic. I'll try and get the best price I can, but I'm flying Virgin because I love that
The
brand.
experience.
It's the experience.
Yeah.
So it's the secret is being able to connect with your customers, with them knowing that there's an ocean of choices, yet they just want you.
Imagine that.
And it's absolutely doable, and many companies have experienced that.
We always look for breakthrough thinking, and I got to tell you that you broke down some walls today when you said there is always a story.
Always.
I love that.
I'll tell you why. Because every single human being understands the world they live in by using narrative.
Right, and narrative that's relatable. And it
Story.
doesn't have to be
We have to be
fantastical,
able to
does it?
relate.
Or does it? It doesn't have to be.
No.
It just
In
has to be
fact-
relatable.
in fact,
it has to be appreciated.
the more real, the
Yeah,
better.
exactly.
And I used to worry, like, oh gosh, do I have a story that's as good
You're
as
right.
going to
we
landing
gotta
on
push
the moon?
this. We got to push this.
You know,
Right,
or
exactly.
going to Mars. Like, no, I
No.
don't. I've got a story of going broke. So how do I use that? Well, really, really well, we found out. So it's truth, it's authenticity, and one of the things I always say in life, it's not what happens to you that defines you, it's how you deal with it. That's what defines you. So that's where the story comes from.
Just switching gears a little bit. Often we see one brand over here, and then they somehow magically come together and they both just like go whoosh up. What kind of opportunities do you see out there that, or maybe you've been involved in that, where there's that co-branding where you can really take both brands or
Great question.
multiple brands and bring them up to
So
a higher
I was
level?
doing a presentation in Las Vegas where I live, and in the audience was a lady who owns LV Woman magazine, and we started chatting. Her and her husband, my husband and I, we hit it off with them, and we just went out for a few drinks, and we were having such a good time. And then the next day, I thought, what am I thinking? We should co-create something, and so we are. We're doing a 2-day Kick-Ass Brand Academy. It's going to be in September. We're launching it in July, and we don't compete, but we can win together. So we're actually creating a headshots, happy hour, and branding events, book clubs for free, and those people who want to go further and get coaching and go to the weekend workshop will do that together.
And
So
what do you call that event?
it's called the Kick-Ass Brand Academy.
I like
By the world famous company.
that.
Yeah, an LV Woman magazine.
And LV Woman Magazine and David Tyerman. That's a name that we'll remember, really. I would love to connect with you further.
Awesome.
If people are listening to this and they're inspired by it, as I know I am, and I'm sure as you are too, RJ,
Sure.
knowing the importance of branding and getting to the essence of it and getting a great story and getting people out there in your marketplace to therefore pay attention to you and do business with you, how do they interface with you to make that connection?
WorldFamousCompany.com. You can email me through there. It's also davidtyerman.com, but that's harder to spell. So just remember World Famous Company. And we're not talking about world famous means being world famous in your market. It doesn't necessarily
That's
have to
true.
mean that you're a household name across the world. It means you're famous in your market, and that's the goal.
I have to tell you something interesting on that point. There was a young boy that lived in a neighborhood of ours, and I was asking him a question about, the neighborhood. And he said to me, and again, children sometimes have the best way of just putting things right in perspective. And he said, we were talking about going places, and I was traveling a lot for business. He was asking me about that, and he said, my whole world is right here, and this was his, he had his little skateboard and his thing.
Right.
This was his world. And so to that point, there you are.
Right.
I love it.
Awesome.
You're an amazing guy.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We're
Thank
really
you,
happy
David.
to have
That was
you.
great.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming to Detroit.
Okay. I
Okay.
love Detroit.
We love that. We love you. All right, David Tyerman. David Tireless. David Tyerman. You've worn us out. All right, back with more on Startup Nation in a minute. All right. Live streaming from Detroit Startup Week. RJ King, Jeff Sloan, StartupNation, and Detroit Startup Week. We've had a good run over a couple of days interviewing some important people here in the community, and now we've got somebody who's arguably created the greatest source of inspiration and confidence in this community. John Oberheid from Duo Security.
I appreciate the praise. You could also say you're reaching really down in the bottom of the barrel now to bring
I got to
me here,
tell you
but-
what, we could say that, but we cannot say that about you and about what the company has meant here. I mean, all kidding aside, I know you know too, to have a success like that here in this community, not only in terms of bringing the money back and having it be available here in the region to foster further entrepreneurial growth, but the inspiration, the confidence that it builds is invaluable.
Yeah, we've seen that impact already in terms of some of our we had quite a mix of investors, but a lot from the West Coast, some local, some from the Valley, and we've already seen kind of influx of interest and capital in other Michigan companies because they saw that, hey, it is certainly possible to build a successful business here and have
That's
great
right
investor
there.
outcome. And
Right.
so a lot of the even maybe more tightly scoped Valley investors that said, like, we only do Bay Area, we only do San Francisco, are now starting to look elsewhere and looking at Michigan in particular.
Amazing.
John, talk about you put your your name on the door, so to speak, open up Duo Security. And what were some of the things that led to the success? And then once it came, how did you manage it and enhance it?
Yeah, so we started the company back in 2009, and I don't know if we had a door to put our name on at that point, but we were actually out of a co-working space called the Tech Brewery that we also helped manage for other startups. So it was kind of a great community to start the company in, being surrounded by other founders and entrepreneurs that were going through the same struggles that we were. If you listen to our competitors, they said it's 5 people in a basement. We said, hey, no, it's actually 6 people in a co-working space. But when we started the company maybe a little differently than many startups. Oftentimes, an entrepreneur has an idea and says, there's this problem out there, I want to go solve it, and I'm going to start a company to go do that. We had maybe a little bit of an inverse approach of Doug and I had known each other from the security industry, from Ann Arbor, from Arbor Networks, which is a previous company, and we said we want to build the next great cybersecurity company, but we don't know what problem we want to solve yet. So let's go start the
You
company.
knew the space was hot, and
Yeah,
that was your
yeah.
area of expertise.
Yeah, we knew the space inside and out, and that's why we wanted to do something different, because it's a really kind of painful industry. It's important, totally critical. Like,
Critically, and more so every day.
yeah, certainly. As one of our investors said, it's cybersecurity is one of the largest problems on a geopolitical scale for the next few decades, and that's
Exactly.
totally the case as we've seen over the past few years. But it's kind of what we grew up in the security community, and we just saw an entire $100 billion industry full of companies that were selling snake oil, that were spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt about, like, you're going to get hacked. It's not a matter of if but when. And we saw a lot of organizations just kind of struggling to protect themselves. They couldn't even afford the security products that were being sold, and oftentimes you buy the product and it ends up costing you even more to deploy it,
Sure.
to maintain it. Your users hate it. And so there's a lot of just bad practices in the industry from a customer relationship perspective, from a business perspective, and we said we can do this dramatically different, like do the right thing, kind of in quotes.
So, but at some point you had to say to yourself, we're going to do the right thing, but we got to now figure out specifically what we're going to do. You got to have a product,
Yeah.
right? So you then undertook a research phase, a brainstorming phase? where you guys said,
we
what are gonna-
brainstormed
right.
every idea under the
Whiteboard,
sun. and-
spitball.
Yeah, and I think it really helped crystallize our philosophy on the business as a whole, because in that time in 2009, iOS and the iPhone were brand new. First iPhone was launched, I think, in 2007. Even, Android phones were brand new. We were still in a different era of mobility. We were in a different era of cloud computing adoption, things like Office 365, like
Right,
didn't even
right,
exist
right,
yet.
right,
and,
right.
So a lot of the technologies that were kind of this next kind of massive wave of disruption of organizations, of how do you manage all the devices that your users are bringing into their job, all these cloud apps that they're leveraging for good intention to be productive. How do you kind of secure that new environment? And we were exploring really hot areas of mobile security and cloud security, and doing what we did at Arbor, but at a whole nother scale. And we just kind of went back to basics and said, let's talk to customers. What a concept, right? Go talk to your customers, figure out what problems they have, and figure out how to solve them. And customers just said, hey, we're getting breached because of phishing attacks. If I can convince you to give up your password, and I can log in as you to your corporate applications, all of my other security controls don't matter. If I can impersonate
And that was
you as a
happening a
user-
lot.
Yeah, it was
That was a
happening.
big problem, huge problem.
Out the
Still
wazoo.
happening.
Yeah, it's still happening. And we're like, yeah, okay, like, we understand that. Like, phishing and password stealing is a problem. There is a solution in the market for it. It's painful. Everyone universally hates it. It's this incumbent technology that was literally invented in 1985. It's the oldest sort of product in computer security. And, like, these are all knowns. Like, they're not anything surprising. But we had to, in some ways, like, get over our own ego. There was an expectation of like, oh, Doug and John are starting a security company. They're going to come up with something like super cool and super sexy, and it's going to be like the hottest thing in the market. And we had to say, no, we're going to go back to basics, and we're going to
That's a
solve.
little basic.
Yeah.
I don't want to say simple, but I mean, it's a simple problem. People understand the problem, and you had to come up with a solution to that. But as you're saying, it wasn't sexy.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
wasn't sexy. It was
right.
like, we know this is the right solution. Now let's just commit to figuring out how we're going to solve it in a completely disruptive way.
Do you remember the moment the two of you came together and said, "This is it"?
Yeah, but it was kind of like like we know we should do this, and we know it's the right problem to solve, but we still had to get over that gap of like, what are we going to do that's dramatically different? Like, there's so many incumbents in this space. In hindsight, there was a perfect situation of they're completely ripe for disruption.
Right. You
and-
still didn't have a product yet. You didn't have
Yeah.
a solution yet.
Yeah,
You
and-
identified the area you wanted to focus on, but you still now needed to come up with a solution.
And that was a leap of faith to say, like, okay, we know that we're, creative enough to come up with something different. And again, we really focused on how do we make security easy for organizations, easy for end users. Because if you guys probably have some interactions with security technology in your day-to-day lives, and it's usually pain, right? It's like,
Of course.
telling you that you're a bad person and that you can't go to that website, or you can't,
Or you don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah. It's like this esoteric thing that, like, I
Speak for yourself.
like, I'm trying to do the right thing for my company or for my security, and we took a different approach. Is that, like, we're not building security for computers or for mobile devices or for networks or for infrastructure. We're building security for people, for humans. Like, that's the weakest link in a lot of these
Sure.
organizations that techers are going after. So how do we make sure we really design it in the right way to be adopted and utilized? And so that we kind of formatted our company's mission of how do we democratize security by making it easy and effective. It sounds so straightforward and simple. Like, of course you want it to be easy and effective, but as I mentioned, the security industry was full of ineffective solutions that were kind of pain in the ass to use. So it was a completely different approach to kind of delivering our technology and our business.
And so you did what? You came up with what?
So I think those mega trends I mentioned of cloud and mobility in the early 2010 timeframe, that was really what led to a lot of dramatic success for us. In that we the introduction of these technologies into organizations, like embracing mobility, embracing cloud, created all sorts of problems that your existing security technologies could not protect.
And did success come fast?
I think we had a little bit of we always look back at the 9-10 years we've been doing this. We had a little bit of a slow start. We bootstrapped for the first year. We raised a small seed round of $1 million. Nowadays, there's like $10 million seed rounds, which is crazy. And we hired a couple folks. We were 5 people and 6 people and 7. It was really kind of long end of the hockey stick before it really took off. So it wasn't until our A round that we raised from Google Ventures that kind of set us on this incredible kind of hypergrowth trajectory of basically like doubling our team and tripling or doubling our
Was it the
revenue.
money that came in that then led to the resources that you were able to amass or what was it that got you, instead of moving horizontally, moving up on the hockey stick?
I think it was a little bit of both, but we spent the first couple of years really building a solid foundation for our product, and we always knew that from a business perspective, we wanted to build a SaaS business with recurring revenue. We saw the power that had in terms of, I can go to your website, I can see the pricing, I can click and sign up, I can try the product, and I can buy it without having to interact with anyone in terms of the company, in terms of, you don't have to talk to a sales rep if you just want to plug in a credit card and start using the product. And we GA'd the product on our website in 2011, and from there it really kind of took off on its own, where we had companies like Facebook that would call us up and say, hey, we're ready to buy the product. And we're like, did you use it? Or did you sign up? And they're like, yeah, we did.
So was there a moment when you guys looked at each other and said, wow?
Yeah, there was quite a few. And
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sure.
it just kind of was this new trajectory for the organization that we really had to, had that awesome problem of figuring out, like, how do we scale to address the amazing
I think the essence of what
opportunity.
I'm driving is that entrepreneurs, they believe in what they're doing, they have this vision, they pursue it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Even in an entrepreneur's mind who's doing it and feels he or she is on a success path, the validation comes, much after your own confidence comes, your own belief comes, and when that validation does come, it can come in varying degrees of intensity. There was clearly a moment for you guys where, the validation came in a big wave.
Yeah.
And you knew you were onto something not just good, but something really significant.
Yeah, we had, that A round I mentioned with Google Ventures. A lot of everything after our seed round, our investors all came completely inbound from hearing about us. And we talked with the folks at Google Ventures and said, like, how did you find out about us? And they're like, well, we talked to our entire portfolio of companies we've invested in and asked them, what do you see that's exciting that are up-and-coming startups? And they had a bunch of, high-flying tech companies that said, this two-factor cybersecurity company out of Michigan is the most exciting thing we see. And the partners at GV were like, what? Like, wow, that's weird. We should probably take a look.
And then there's a moment in time after the validation. I had the opportunity to interview a couple guys who also have another unicorn here in the state emerging, just to make out a major investment, put their value at over $1 billion, another tech company here. And they said that there was a moment where after the validation comes and they say, wow, this is really incredible, this is going to be big, then there's fear. Yeah. Like at any moment, one wrong move, can topple, or something unforeseen coming out of the blue, whether it's competition or a change in the environment or a product breakdown that all of a sudden calls into question, whether the product really works, and all these kinds of things that you do your best to try to manage. But there's a moment of, now we just got to get this to the finish line, because, it's scary keeping it all together, right?
We were just talking about this at a panel down at Detroit Startup Week just about an hour ago, and it is a real challenge and opportunity when if you're just starting the company, it's your own livelihood and career that's on the line. As soon as you bring new people on, suddenly some of that risk is transferred to them. You're not responsible for their livelihood and career development.
Right.
And you close a round of financing, and that's exciting. You got money in the bank. Like we had 7 figures in our seed round. The wire hits. Everyone's excited. Now we got this runway. We can hire more people. But there's this realization that this is not a bank account full of money. This is a timer, a timer that only counts down. And the more
that's exactly right.
The more you hire, the more you expand, the faster it's counting down. And it really the responsibility is additive as the company grows. That now it's not just building a great product, it's not just building a great business, it's building a great organization. It's building a foundation for all of the employees that come on board and choose to go on this crazy ride with you. That's a kind of a heavy burden, but also a really exciting thing when you can see the team thrive and grow in their capabilities and grow in their career.
And the company sold for what just recently?
$2.35 billion.
Yeah. Wow.
Talk about what you're working on today and where things are going for you.
Yeah, so we closed the acquisition with Cisco late last year, so we're about 8-9 months in, and I often get that question of like, how's it going? And sometimes people answer the question like, and the voice goes up like 3 octaves, like, it's good. I feel good that I can confidently answer like, it's really good, without raising my voice. And that is, I'd say, we're just as busy as we were before, but there's so much broader opportunity, not just within Cisco, but within the security industry as a whole. Security is a $100 billion business. Cisco is actually the largest cybersecurity provider in the world, and that amount of scale is very interesting to our product, to our business, because we can leverage that footprint to really achieve our mission of democratizing security. How do we bring really complicated stuff to organizations of all shapes and sizes, but also ensuring that Cisco's the place that our employees can continue to grow their own personal careers.
We've had an opportunity to ask a couple of people, how do you measure success? In your case, obviously success is extreme. I mean, you probably didn't set out to say, I want to have that kind of success. Of course, everyone loved to have that story, but practically speaking, this doesn't happen all the time. And it doesn't need to in order to have a reasonable measure of success, let alone even an extreme measure of success without going that far. It's got to feel pretty incredible, that moment where you've got it, and whether that's the company now pursuing the acquisition, regardless of the amount, that feeling that an entrepreneur gets validated, because you have this vision. People questioned it. People question all the decisions you made. Personally, I know I can say that to any entrepreneur, and you did it in spite of probably all the people telling you there's a better path for you. There's a safer path, a more secure path. Are you sure you want to do that? Are you making the right decisions? What are you thinking? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that was when I was, getting back to the, how do we build something that's the basics that every company needs to secure themselves. We would talk to, other folks in the industry, and they'd be like, oh, I heard of you guys. Like, what are you guys doing? And we'd be like, strong authentication, like 2-factor, and they're like, oh, that's boring. We'd be like, yeah, but it's kind of important, and that was the maybe the most kind of visceral disbelief of like, yeah, I thought you'd do something cooler. We're like, no, trust us, this will be cool.
And do you feel like now, do you feel that validation, or do you still feel, do you get up in the morning, is there something to prove?
I think the most personally gratifying validation is the bigger impact we've had on the security industry of now the next waves of startups that are starting off or kind of in an early stage are saying like, I want to be like Duo. Duo showed that there was a better way to treat our customers, to build products to solve real problems.
How great is that?
Yeah, market in an authentic way. And that's the validation that I really appreciate, because that's what we wanted to set out to show, that you can actually build a business the right way and have good fundamentals and still be successful. Like if you do the right things, the score kind of takes care of itself.
Would it be fair to say you don't need to work another day in your life? You don't need to work another day in your life. I'm going to ask a follow-up question. That would be fair to say, right?
I always need to work.
No, you probably don't need to work another day in your life, I would assume. But you need to work for different reasons. You want to work. You want to be productive.
Absolutely.
You want to continue to pursue things, improve things, and achieve things, right? That's what's driving you now.
Yeah, there's always a larger scale to go after.
Of course. So you gotta. There's now it's funny. The bar's set high for you. Let me just tell you that in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
The bar's set high for you. You did that. You did that to your credit, amazingly. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, I think besides like growing our business within Cisco, I think there's an exciting opportunity to grow the communities that we operate in. Ann Arbor and Detroit being 2 of those. We also have presence in the Bay Area, in Austin, and in London, and that's what is exciting to see already happening. Like I mentioned, with new investment influx, but also our people that have been with the company for many years, they're going to go off and do great things after Duo. They're going to start their own companies, and seeing that kind of bigger impact on the ecosystem is exciting. There was a security company called ISS. It was one of the first internet security companies ever, and they IPO'd and they got bought by IBM. They're down in Atlanta. And it was that sort of catalyst event paired with the talent and mentorship from that company, paired with Georgia Tech as a great computer science school that just led to this multi-decade kind of spidering effect of all of these companies that spun out and created this amazing ecosystem. And
How about
we hope
HP
that
in Silicon Valley, right?
yeah, yeah. And we
mean,
hope that Duo can
And
do
Duo,
that for
Duo in
yeah,
Detroit,
for Michigan.
and it even has the D's, Duo and Detroit. It's a great story, and you guys are a huge part of the momentum that we now have. I mean, huge. That now I hear all the time in the venture incubator, accelerator, startup community, Duo. I mean, that's it. People are looking at that and now believing and wanting to be part of that, inspired by it. Amazing stuff, RJ.
John, just inquiry, I would imagine that going forward, you would, and maybe you're already into it, but there's got to be a pretty big runway for protecting, whether it's called Bitcoin or cybersecurity or cyber currency. Facebook just launched into that space. Are you guys into that space or looking at it, or because it seems like it's right in your wheelhouse?
It's definitely, I mean, financial services as a whole is a big opportunity for security. If a hacker can, steal money by breaking in the systems, that is a very direct route to monetizing their attacks.
Sure.
And yes, we see a lot of interest in those financial services areas, but it is a different kind of challenge where an attacker can walk off with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency, and there's zero trace. And so making sure that you have strong user authentication, that who's logging into the cryptocurrency website is who they say they are is absolutely critical.
Yeah, great. Could be another huge business here.
How old are you?
35.
35. We expect big things out of you.
Going on 25. Look how young you look.
We expect big things out of you. Wow. John Oberheide, congratulations.
Thank you.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah,
For sure.
Appreciate it.
Well
For sure.
done.
We're happy to have you in the community. We're happy to have you on Startup Nation here and at Detroit Startup Week. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, right on. What a great way to end. And we're going to do one more quick shout out to the sponsors. Startup Week Detroit. What a cool thing this is. Incredible. I've learned something. I got inspired. I know you got inspired.
Oh, yeah.
You got inspired. Powered by Quicken Loans in partnership with Venture Catalyst. Sponsors DBusiness, Siren PR, and Dell. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
Right, building's right across the street.
Nice.